Hello, Professor Morgan here, giving you a little bit of insight into poetry. So, I will admit I'm old. So, when I was growing up, whenever I thought poetry, I thought of beatniks, where they'd be, banging on congos or bongos or whatever, and they'd have whatever, and I just didn't get it. I just was like, what in the world is this? I didn't understand it, and it was a thing. And then as I got a little bit older, I realized, well, there's different ways to look at things. Okay, so actually, the way that I like to look at poetry is a better way for me, at least, is to paint. It's painting with words. It is an art form, and it's just ways that we put together words, not only in the words that we choose, but in the format that we place them in. And there's all sorts of different approaches when it comes to poetry, and we're going to look at a few of those in here. So, what does poetry do? Well, it can do all sorts of things. Sometimes it can be silly, make us laugh. It can make us think. It can be, sometimes short poems are very short and funny. Sometimes they're long and serious. Sometimes they rhyme. Sometimes they don't rhyme. Okay, so let's look at some basic poetry terms. In this video, we're gonna look at couplets, tercets, stanzas, free verse, the haiku, the sonnet, and yeah, there we go, those ones. There we go. Yeah, here we go. So a couplet is basically it's basically when two lines rhyme back to back. So you have a line and then you have another line and they are back to back. They're one on top of another and they rhyme. So here's an example from good old Dr. Seuss. Um, Green eggs and ham. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them. Sam I am. So ham and Sam rhyme. That is a couplet. And you can even see that they kind of said, hey, this is, hey. And then we have, I do not like them in a boat. I do not like them with a goat. See, this is a couplet. So these two rhyme. And then I do not like them in a house. I do not like them in a mouse. So this poem would have three couplets. That's one way we could look at it. So couplet again, words that are lines that are back to back. Okay. All right. So tercets basically take couplets and pump it up a notch, where basically now we go from two lines to three lines. And tercets, for some reason, I always think of tricycle. I don't know, three. Anyway, so let's take a look at tercets. Okay. The students in English 213 closed their eyes and began to dream. To wake them, he let out a scream. Okay, so you basically have three lines, and each of the lines kind of rhyme. And you'll notice that 13 and dream. Is that really a rhyme? We're going to get to that. That's a teaser. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, let's talk about stanzas. Now, I told you that poetry not only is about the words that we choose, but it's also the way that we decide to, place them and display them, as it were. Okay, so stanzas are basically, basically, well, this is the definition, a group of lines, that form a basically, a reoccurring metrical unit of a poem. What does that even mean? It's basically just a group of lines that are together. Okay. And they can be any number of lines. It can be two, three, four. It could be seven. It could be, a billion, really. There's no really hard, fast rule when it comes to, how many lines a stanza has to have. It's usually the way that it is formatted. So, for example, there's this poem called We Real Cool. And you'll notice that in this one, we have four different stanzas. And how we can tell is that there is a gap between here and here and here and here and here and here. Okay, so basically by looking at it, we could say, oh, look, there is four different couplets. Okay, because we've broken them up different ways. Okay, and notice that these top three here are couplets because they all end with the same word. And they're like, why does it end with the word we? Well, we're going to get to that a little bit later in the video. Okay, then the ballad stanza. So instead of for the ballad stanza, basically it intermixes the lines that rhyme. So instead of like the rhymes, like you have one line and then the line directly after it rhyme, it kind of intermixes those. So it's like the first line and the third line will rhyme, or the second line and the fourth line will rhyme. Okay, so here's an example of a ballad stanza. Okay, the pretty girl walked up to me and asked, do you have an iPhone? So you'll notice that me and iPhone don't rhyme. Okay, so all right. Yes, I said, as happy as can be. Oh, okay, so be and me rhyme. So this first line and the third line rhyme. Great, my boyfriend is home alone. Oh, meh. So basically, so you've got line 1 and 3 that rhyme and line 2 and 4 that rhyme. So this would be considered a ballad stanza. That is, so you have line 1 and 2, so they intermix. Okay, ballad stanza. All right. Now, free verse basically is, the definition is that, they don't necessarily have to rhyme, but, in theory, it's kind of like follows the natural rhythms of speech. That's very debatable. Free verse is basically poems that don't rhyme, is in a broad sense. And again, this video is a very broad overview of poetry. So, an example of free verse: the fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Now, you'll notice that how many stanzas do we have here? Well, we have two. We have one that's 2 lines, and we have one that's 4 lines. And the gap here indicates there's a change as far as the number of the stanzas. So again, this is free verse, and none of this rhymes, but it still has a very poetic kind of flow to it. Okay, free verse. Moving on, haiku. So haiku comes from the Japanese style. It comes from the land of Japan, and it basically is very specific. So you've got unrhyming lines where you have 3 lines, okay, and they use 5, 7, and 5 syllables. Now, again, a syllable is just the trick that I learned as a kid is I would stick my hand under my chin. And so every time that I spoke, when my chin touched my hand, I knew I had a new syllable. So if I said my name, Jason Morgan, that's 4 syllables. Okay, so let's look at the first few words here. Japanese verse. That's 5. Okay, so it's not the matter of words; it's the number of syllables. Okay, so a haiku is 5, 7, and then 5, and it's very strict that way. And generally, haikus traditionally use, take try to capture a moment in time, often with nature. And let's take a look at an example of a haiku. As the wind does blow across the trees, I see the buds blooming in May. Okay, as the wind does blow. There's 5, okay? Across the trees, I see the. That's 7 syllables. Buds blooming in May. 5. 5, 7, 5. So there's your haiku. All right. The sonnet. Ooh, this bad boy. This is, here we go. This one is 14 lines. And it uses a variable rhyme scheme. So you may not have, where the ballad stanza was like 1 and 3 had a match and 2 and 4 had a match. This gets all sorts of weird. So let's look at one of the more famous sonnets, okay? Here we go. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach, when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every love's days, most quiet need, by sun and by candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion to put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life, and, if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. Okay, so 14 lines. I need to use 2 pages for that, okay? But you'll notice that we have some words that rhyme. Like praise and faith kind of rhyme, use and lose. So these are almost like, hey, that's a ballad stanza, right? Sort of, okay. But lose and choose, whoa, okay. Breath, okay, death. Okay, but let's look at the previous thing. We got ways, days, maybe grace kind of falls in that. Sight, light, right. So you got words that kind of rhyme. So it's kind of an intermixing scheme, and that is a sonnet. Okay, now when it comes to formatting, we have 2 different types. We have the end stopping and we have the enjambment. Okay, so end stopping, we saw this before. This is where you have the lines, 1 line, and it just comes to an end. Bop, there's your period at the end. That is the end stop. It stops at the end of the line. And then we have the enjambment, which we go back to this one, like as the wind does blow across the sea, trees I see, the buds blooming in May. So this is that haiku. But you'll notice that the sentence doesn't end at the line. It continues on to the next line. That's enjambment, and it kind of just continues to flow on. Okay. Again, if we look at We Real Cool, this uses enjambment because we cool, we left school, we lurk late, we strike straight. Now the only one that it's like we die soon. I mean that one kind of ends on a whatever. But keep in mind, so why do people do it this way? Is this just weird? Well, real quick, a psychological thing is if you start the beginning and you don't finish it, it kind of pushes your brain to the next line. It almost creates a sense of anticipation, like, oh, I got to see what's next. So again, we could spend a lot of time on that, but this is just an overview. Okay, and then let's talk about slant rhymes. These can also be known as half rhymes, imperfect rhymes, or near rhymes, and we've seen these throughout the video so far. And these are words that aren't considered to be true rhymes. For a true rhyme, generally you have the last vowel sound and the last consonant sound be the same, like day and, well, let's see, um, dark and park, right? So arc, dark, park. Okay, so you have the vowel sound and the consonant sound are the same. Now, for slant rhymes, generally the vowel sound can be the same, but the last consonant sound doesn't have to be the same. So let's look at some examples. Lovely and funny. Okay, so these would be considered to be, like these slant rhymes. Lovely, funny. But you have lovely, funny. That last vowel, that last consonant sound here is different. Okay, eyes, light. Again, the I, light. So the vowel sound is the same, but the consonant sound is different. Place, days. Okay, so again, but a different thing. And then last but not least, dark and heart. There's the hard K and then the hard T. Dark, heart. So those would consider to be sort of rhymes, which would become slant rhymes. So there's a quick little overview when it comes to poetry and kind of like the basic concepts and terms that you should know. Okay, there you go.